Hi everyone, this is BritSimon. I've published an article this morning that explains that the Visa Bulletin has been published, which concerns DV2021 cases. It's important for two aspects. The first is for the case numbers that will be current in October. That would normally be interesting to us because we would normally see interviews arranged for the month of October. And I'll show you just in a moment. I'm going to show you how to read this Visa Bulletin and just quickly discuss those numbers. The other thing that's in this Visa Bulletin is the selectee numbers for DV 2021 for each country. That's an important piece of information that we needed to know, and to know whether the year is an under or over selected year. Under selected means that there are less selectees than we would expect to need. And that in an under-selected year, it's very likely that the region will go current, all regions will go current, and that there'll be enough visas for everybody. This year, it turns out, is an over-selected year, meaning there are 132,404 selected applicants. And there are just under 55,000 visas available. So there's a lot more selectees than there are visas available, and it's important therefore we understand what that means for case numbers, etc. It does mean that there's a risk for high case numbers, and I'm going to explain some of that, but there's an awful lot of factors that we need to take into account before we do that sort of analysis, so I'm going to do a more complete video about that whole subject later on today or perhaps tomorrow morning. So look for that video over the next couple of days. But just to quickly cover, so this is the September Visa Bulletin. It's now August, middle of August, of course. It's called the September Visa Bulletin. But in this bulletin, if you scroll down to where the DV lottery stuff is, you'll see first of all information on the previous Visa Bulletin numbers, and then the new information in this section. It's section C this time, and it's the rank cutoffs which will apply in October, and you can see the regional numbers there. These numbers are largely unimportant, I would say, because of the timing of the Immigrant Ban challenge. The reality is we're not going to see any interviews arranged for the month of October. Nobody, I believe I'm 99.9% certain nobody is going to get an interview in October because there is an immigrant ban in place until the end of the year. And that ban is being fought in court, as those of you that are followers of my blog will understand that. Is being fought in court. There's a hearing on August 27th, and either at that hearing or a few days after that hearing, we're hoping to get a decision on whether the ban itself can be blocked. If it is blocked, then normal activity could resume, which will be helpful for DV 2021, but the opportunity to arrange interviews for the month of October by that time will already be gone. So we'll have lost for sure October, even if we win the legal challenge. If we don't win the legal challenge, then we are going to lose October, November, December. That's 3 months out of the 12 full months of processing for DV 2021. And that obviously will have some sort of impact. It means that they have to do more work in less time, and that's not always possible. Okay, so that in itself is a negative factor towards this year's DV 2021 processing. But we don't know about that yet. We just know what's on the immediate horizon, which is the hearing date on August 27th. Okay, so these are the numbers for those that are interested, but as I say, don't get too excited. Certainly don't go comparing this to previous years. It's meaningless at the moment. It doesn't mean anything, and you can never just take these numbers and, for example, multiply by 12 and say, okay, if 2,900 are in Africa are current in the first month, then multiply by 12 and that will give you the number for the year. No, that's not at all how it works. Please don't use simplistic exercises like that to try and do estimations. That's not how it works at all. So just don't focus on these numbers too much. Doesn't mean anything. As I mentioned, the selectee numbers per country are in this particular visa bulletin as well. If you want to know where they are, they're towards the bottom of the visa bulletin, as you can see. And there's a couple of interesting nuggets of information here. Something I saw that was particularly interesting was that DV2021 only had 6.7 million qualified entries, nearly 12 million including derivatives. That's about half the normal number of entries that we see. Undoubtedly, the procedure with the passports had an effect this year, and we do know that a lot of people just didn't enter because they didn't have a passport, and I think in Africa that was particularly true. And I also know that there's a lot of people who unwisely and falsely claim to not to have no passport, but believed that they could skirt around the new rules by saying that they were picking one of the exceptions, such as being in a communist country that doesn't issue passports or something. That's not going to help those people. So there are even selectees now that are probably likely to be disqualified based on not listing their passport and just providing false information at the time. So anyway, it's a low number of entries this year. So that meant that everyone who was selected had a much higher chance of selection. If there's half as many entries into the lottery, effectively your chances of selection this year were twice that of previous years. So that's interesting, just so you know. The other thing that's interesting in this visa bulletin that will be important to us is the annual limit has been set at 54,750. So there are, in theory, there are 55,000 visas allocated to the DV program, but for several years now, the NICARA program has been taking an allocation away from that number. But in the last couple of years, that allocation has been reduced drastically, and now is only 250 visas being set aside for NICARA, which gives us almost the entire allocation of 55,000 visas, which is good news. So we've got 132,000 people have been selected. Nearly 55,000 visas will be available, and what we have to figure out now is how many of the selected 132,000 are either not going to proceed, or they'll proceed but they'll be denied. And what does that mean for high case numbers? And that's really what we need to think about next. But I did want to just get this video out there to explain the fact that the visa bulletin has been published with all of this information, and I'll be following up with a more detailed video as soon as I can. That will explain what these numbers mean in as much detail as we can get into at the moment, to see exactly what's likely to be the outcome. But do understand that the final outcome this year is going to depend on all of the legal activity. It's going to depend on the pandemic. It's going to depend on the election. There's going to be lots of other factors. So we're all going to need to be very cautious about making assumptions about high case numbers or how things will progress. So although we've got the information now that we've been waiting for a few months, let's be cautious in the way that we analyze that information and don't make crazy assumptions at this point. So all right, I hope that's clear. I'll be posting a new video as soon as I possibly can, once I've actually sat down and looked at these numbers and performed some analysis that I plan to do, and then we can talk about it from there. Okay everyone, hope that helps. Anyway, bye bye.